Welcome to the Indiana Athletic Trainers Association podcast. The IATA is dedicated to advancing the profession of athletic training and empowering membership through advocacy, education, networking, and innovative resources. To find out more about the IATA, check out our website and social media pages. The views and opinions expressed by speakers, guests, or others who have provided materials to and for this podcast are not necessarily those of the IATA. The IATA assumes no responsibility for nor endorses any of the comments, recommendations, or materials that are provided. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the IATA podcast. My name is Daniel Welty and hosting this episode. And we're going to talk about some money. And I have the privilege of having Tiffany Franklin, the current IATA treasurer, on for this episode. Welcome to the podcast, Tiffany.
Thanks, Daniel.
So like every podcast, so if you want to introduce yourself to everybody listening in.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for having me on this evening. So my name's Tiffany Franklin. I am currently serving as the treasurer. Oh no, sorry, my dogs are going to bark. And this is live feed too, right? I am currently serving as the treasurer for IATA, and I actually roll off here in March. It's been almost 2 terms for me. The treasurer is elected and serves a 2-year term and can be reelected in that role. So I'm currently finishing up my second one, and I am currently full-time faculty and program director for the Master of Science in Athletic Training program at Franklin College in Franklin, Indiana. It's also my alma mater. Let's see, I teach full-time. I am involved heavily with IATA. I'm a mom. I have furry animals and real human kids, and I'm all over the place. So you get the real me today. I actually just came from the gym because I got to squeeze that in too, and just all over the place. So I'm happy to be here tonight and talk about money.
I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, whether you're just getting out of the gym or not, but
Gotta squeeze it in somehow. It keeps your mental right.
that's true. That is true. So I just want to talk a little bit about, just generally about some different things within the IATA and talking about some money. And obviously, money is important. And we know in today's world, things aren't cheap and everything's on the rise of what things cost. And so, but really want to talk about some specific things within the IATA. And so, obviously, when we talk about money, obviously, treasurer gets brought up in the conversation, and you're involved in a lot of those things from a financial standpoint as treasurer. So can you just talk a little bit about your role as treasurer of the IATA and some responsibilities that you have being the treasurer?
Absolutely. So as treasurer, you're first and foremost, yes, you oversee the budget and the money. But I think it's also really important and something that I really began to understand as I started this role. As we serve in this role, you serve as a member of the executive committee and the council. So really there's so much more responsibility than treasurer, right? I mean, yes, I oversee the budget. I make sure that all of the financial obligations are taken care of. I make sure that we're using money within our means and we're doing what we should be doing with the budget and answering requests and stuff like that. And the big thing that I do every year is we look at the budget and we have a committee and we review those requests, and then eventually we propose that budget to the executive council, and then it gets voted on. So I kind of oversee that process and lead it. But I'm the leader. I need everybody else's input and help and expertise. And so I just kind of help steer the ship really in that. I bring questions for other people to help me answer, and we kind of answer that together. And so we work very closely. The IATA works very closely with the coordinating group, our association management, and we have a really good, very strong relationship, and we have for many years. And they do a lot of assistance with the financial piece and assistance with that budget piece. So I'm extremely thankful for them to help in that role, because it could be quite a bit of a learning curve if you've never served in that treasurer role or have some of that background. I can keep talking for forever or about the roles and responsibilities, but that's kind of overarching responsibility. I guess a couple more things. Obviously, I do serve as liaison to scholarship and research committee, to the professional development committee, and then to I am oversight of the budget committee. So those are some of the committees that I reach out to. They can come to me for questions. Each council member, member of the board, has a liaison role to a couple of the committees. So those are mine as treasurer.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about more responsibilities than just treasurer, and obviously being on the IATA and as a you're a voting member to be able to make decisions not just on budget but on everything within the IATA. So talk a little bit about maybe some personal responsibility, I guess, a little bit with that, and why you kind of brought that up. I think maybe down that road of why you feel some responsibility and making sure that you're doing the right thing, especially when it comes to voting on certain things.
Yeah, like I said, I think, serving as the treasurer, as soon as I took on that role and obviously reading about it and stuff when I was going through the nomination process and the voting, I realized there were some responsibilities, but I was just excited to get back into being a part of IATA. I actually grew up and learned about IATA as my first ever associate athletic training association. And then I moved and started working in Kentucky. So I was removed from Indiana for almost 5 years. So when I came back, I wanted to get involved just to like reconnect with people and to learn about IATA since 5 years prior, right? And so serving as treasurer really catapulted me into that that situation to learn about current business of IATA, the current state of affairs of IATA. But then I just realized so much more. It's not just about treasurer. You're a voting member and you're a member of that executive committee, of that executive council. And so when you hear other people and their roles talking about here's our committee reports, here's some of our questions, here's some of our problems. It's not really just that one person's role to solve it. It's all of us to come together and volunteer as an association to really help this association continue to do the wonderful things it's done for so many years. And so I think in the last few years, as I've reflected on my role as treasurer, but also a larger committee member for the council and committee, I just think about everybody else that served before me and the people that I think about in those roles when I was a student in the program at Franklin College and thinking about everything they did for IATA. And so that's made me a proud member. And it's also challenged me to step up and to try to be more involved, to learn more about the history and to learn more about how I can help in other roles as well. So, taking on more of an active role with reaching out to the professional development committee, for example, or reaching out to research and scholarship and asking how I can be a liaison and a help to them, but also listening and speaking up at our monthly meetings is super important. Just we all got to be there to help each other. It's a volunteer role, and I don't think that people until you've ever served in one of those roles, I don't think that people realize the importance of that.
Yeah, greatly important of what our volunteers do within the IATA. But then I think, as obviously myself as being a previous, on the board of the IATA and when you're voting on something, even though it may not apply to your committee, you're trying to look at the greater good.
Right.
Does this make sense for our membership? Does it make sense to be able to do this? And obviously making sure that we're doing the right things for our association, for our membership, for the
Hmm.
profession of athletic training as a whole, and trying to advance what we're doing in the state of Indiana. And we all know that, as Hoosiers, we're obviously on the forefront of everything in athletic training to push the needle forward, and so we want to continue that, doing those things. And I know that Tiffany, in your role, that you've continued to do that and push the needle forward, and obviously making some of those people that you've seen, I'm sure, proud in your current role. So you also talked about the budget committee.
Hmm.
Can you talk about um, what the budget committee is?
Yeah, yes. So the budget committee is made up of the executive council or yeah, the board, and also made up of a member from the professional development, from the development committee. So there's the development committee, and then there's the professional development committee, and then our president elect, and our secretary. And I think it's important that our minds come together to think about the budget because the development committee is about trying to bring in money, whether it's sponsorships and scholarship type stuff. And then the professional development money, we spend a lot of money on our annual meetings. So I think it's important that they're involved because they're involved in the expenses and the income, right? And so the budget committee itself is responsible for coming together once a year to look at previous budgets, what money has come in from income and what money we've used. And we talk about, how that money was used. And then we also look at the proposals. So I gather those proposals every year from all of the committees, from everybody in IATA. And then we come together in just that smaller budget committee to look at what everybody requested. We also we look at the history and the trends of things like our income, primarily from sponsorship and from membership. And then we look at our expenses, and we just talk amongst us seven or whatever it is, and we vet it out and talk about what was requested and how we make the ends meet, right? And it's been tough, like you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. It's tough for a lot of reasons. I think, things just with things, everything costs more. And people are also having a hard time with maintaining that membership. And I think there's a lot of different reasons why. At least I have my reasons why I feel like some people have chosen to either renew or not renew their membership. And that's through the NATA. And of course, that trickles down to the region and then to the state. And so that might be a good point to maybe discuss later because some people may not realize that your national membership dues actually assist your state and your regional budget dollars and all the things that we do with it to serve the membership.
Yeah. Well, since you brought it up, let's just talk about it. As
Yeah.
far as I know that the ITA, obviously we encourage everybody to be a part of the NATA membership, and then what that down trickles down to is IATA is in District 4 of NATA, so obviously that includes your District 4 dues, and then it
Hmm.
also includes your dues at the state level, and every state gets to set their own dues at a state level.
Hmm.
And so we have the ability, or the IATA has the ability to be able to set those dues and what that is, and then using the NATA as a conduit to be able to make sure that we collect those dues and those types of things, because it makes it a lot easier when we have somebody else collecting dues for all three different, whether the national, District 4, and IATA. So,
Hmm.
talk a little bit about too, as far as a little bit of, if there's anything additional you want to add to that. I think that's kind of the big picture there for people. But also, obviously people sometimes can't maybe afford all of that. There's other options available for people. Is that correct?
There is, yeah, actually. So the hope is that everybody can become an NATA member, a National Athletic Trainer Association member, and those dues do feed into NATA budget, and then they feed into our District 4 within the Great Lakes Athletic Trainer Association, and then they feed into the state as far as Indiana. So I become a member of NATA. All three of those groups receive some of that money. And like I mentioned, there's just been, during, and I hate to use the word COVID, right? I mean, so many people have just talked about that and how it's impacted a lot of things, but the truth is it was reality, and it really did impact a lot of athletic trainers' jobs, but also a lot of their professional development funds. And I don't know that everybody has been able to recover from that because we've seen nationally membership numbers drop, 20 from since 2021, 2022, and ultimately that affects the member dues that come down to the state levels. So that's not just Indiana, that's every state. And people are also having to weigh what they pay for when it comes to professional development because professional development funds generally did get cut by a lot of programs. And then now that things are a lot available virtually and online, people realize you can get the CEUs online instead of having to pay for the travel. And so people are finding ways, companies are finding ways to try to cut costs because they're paying out more as well. And unfortunately, we've just seen a lot of our membership, I think, have to have a harder decision on what they use their smaller chunk of professional development funds for. And so I think that's part of it. But, I think that it's not necessarily something that Indiana, and I don't know if other states do it as well, but we do have an Indiana only membership option, and it's really meant to be if you're kind of you're really trying to weigh what you can spend your financial your professional development money on, and you want to be a member of your state, but you can't necessarily do the full membership. That is an option just to become a member of Indiana, so you get the full member benefits of IATA, and it is so it's just the member fee, the state fee. I'm trying to think about that. We haven't raised that in several years. And now that I think about it, I'm just used to thinking about the full NATA membership that includes all three, but 60, 55, 60.
Well,
Do you recall off the top of your head? I feel like I should know this as the treasurer.
you should probably know
We
that as the
we
treasurer. I believe it is $60 off the top of my
we've
head,
talked
but
about raising our state dues. So that would mean that when you go to pay your NATA dues, your state also decides what the dues are for the state. So other states have decided what theirs are. It goes into that's why not every single member's from state to state NATA membership is the same because your state membership dues can be different. Well, we've talked about do we want to raise that, and the board as a whole has just decided not to because of this reason right here. And we want people to be a member of IATA. We want people to be a member of NATA, but we realize that some people it just may not be an option for them year to year.
yeah, trying to keep it affordable for people to be able to do that.
Hmm.
Because we know, like you said, money can be tight, and depending on your job and what they're able to pay for in their professional development or what you have in your own personal budget.
Hmm.
And sometimes people are trying to stretch a dollar here and there for certain things, depending on your life circumstance and situation. But can you talk a little bit about, I know we're kind of talking more about membership, but I think it's important because I think it does relate to the budget. But what's the impact if I'm a member of the IATA and whether I am an Indiana only member or I'm also an NATA member and the money that gets trickled down to the state, I'm IATA member regardless. What is the impact? Where's my money going? And what impact do I make being an IATA member?
Absolutely. So our members, our member dollars directly help fund our ability to work closely with a lobbyist and association management that has done a lot to support the association. And if you recall, we just had a state practice act update last year, and a lot of those member dollars go to support things like that, where we work closely with the lobbyist that is in there talking with people every day about athletic trainers and who all we affect and who all we impact, and that's certainly helpful. But the other things that our member dues help pay for are our annual meeting symposium, um, supporting the reception every year that we have, and we try to honor our award winners and our scholarship recipients every year. We have scholarships that we award to students, but also awards that we give out to professionals. So those that are certified. And it's always nice to be able to recognize those that have given so much to the profession. So those dollars go help with that as well. And things to run our association. Our committees do good things, and excuse me, running things like our just simply like putting together a website and sending out information and on social media platforms and stuff like that to try to reach the membership on what we're doing and things like that. It would all that stuff costs money, and it every dollar counts, and we spread it out and we use it at a bare minimum. Really support the student symposium as well. We try to keep student symposium costs at a low cost. That's been challenging as well because we've got to be able to feed the students as well. But as you know, food is expensive, and if we make it a full day, we got to maybe have two meals, and so we've kind of played around with that too. And so we have dollars here and there that just support those things so that it doesn't cost so much money for those things, the annual meeting as well as the student meeting, and then the scholarship money, those types of things. And of course, the legislative expense. And that's where a lot of our money goes nationally too for our membership dues is supporting those that support our profession, sitting at the table of other meetings and committees to help include athletic training as part of the conversation and health and wellness and all of those things.
Yeah, we have to have a seat at the table because if you're not at the seat at the table, you might be on the menu. I think that's the saying, you know.
Right, right.
So I think obviously when we have and I think where our membership dollars make the most impact is that you're advancing the profession of athletic training in the state of Indiana. I mean, really, that's what it
Absolutely.
boils down to when you're a member, and $60,
Yeah.
we can spend $60 super quick. But I think what you're saying, Tiffany, is that $60 really goes pretty far, and because you're
Yeah.
stretching the dollar to make things work for
And
multiple
and
things.
just to kind of maybe give a little bit more insider information on that. We do pay our lobbyist and association management a lot to help keep us in those conversations. And sometimes those conversations that our lobbyist is having are to continue us to be allies with other healthcare professions. And that's because at some point down the road, that may really make a difference on us supporting other, like, for example, physical therapy or occupational therapy. And just having good relationships with people to continue to advocate for who we are and what we do, but how we can work together for continuity of care of patient healthcare and how we can serve all patients. And those little conversations that continue to happen eventually really help pay off when it comes time to we need those allies in our back seat to help us. For example, getting our State Practice Act updated. And a lot of states look to our State Practice Act to try to update theirs. And without having the consistent conversations of little education and little advocacy all the time, that really helps go a long way. And I didn't realize that as a young professional. I didn't realize how important that is until I actually visited the state house and I saw firsthand what lobbyists do and how they do that and how they just learn to have those conversations. One conversation leads to another. And next thing you know, two ideas that totally didn't make sense to talk about at the same time made sense to talk about at the same time and how they can support one another. And it just goes about the bigger thing in life, relationships and trust and communication. That's really what it goes into when you have a lobbyist that's consistently kind of your ears and your eyes at the state house and with
Yeah.
other people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's sometimes we get in this idea of that we want to, and obviously we want athletic training to advance and grow, and we want all these wonderful things to happen, and we know that will continue to happen.
Hmm.
But we can't make enemies with our healthcare, allies, and whether it be SLPs or physicians or whoever, nurses, whoever the case may be, we don't want to make enemies because ultimately we're all trying to do the right things for our patients, and that's really why we got into healthcare, was to help people. And
Hmm.
so we're really all on the same page. We may have a different approach, and we might want to. Sometimes there's trying to stand your ground, and this is my territory to your territory. But at the end of the day, it's like there's a shortage of healthcare providers. We're all trying to help our patients because people just need help because they're in pain, they're sick, and that's really what it comes down to. And there's bigger battles to fight in that regard. And so I think what you said was
Yeah.
just having those relationships and that we just support each other as appropriate. We don't want people going too far out of bounds, but as
Right.
we're
Right.
appropriate and we're doing things within our scope and what we're trained to do, then we can ultimately just help everybody from as much as
Hmm.
we can to serving the greatest number of people in our population.
Yeah.
And so, kind of circling back to the budget, obviously, we talked about membership because I believe membership makes up a large portion of revenue incoming into the budget. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, and then obviously, I think you mentioned it as well as like probably sponsorships is right behind that as far as that
Hmm.
goes with income into the association.
Yeah. And sponsorships that's really taken a different look in the last several years. I think again, since COVID, companies and organizations are just looking differently about how they provide sponsorships. And so that's been a very difficult challenge, not just for Indiana, but for a lot of state associations is sponsorships. Companies are just dropping them. And so that's really hard on a budget that relies on sponsorships. So, I mean, you think about the annual meeting that IATA has every year, being able to bring in those smaller, or larger or smaller expo hall. I mean, those individuals, want to be in front of members that are the ones utilizing their product or seeing something new and different. And so that's nice. And they still want to be involved in those, but it's the behind the scenes sponsorships that are starting to go away. Companies just aren't wanting to sponsor like they used to. So we're trying to think of different ways as a board, but also to try to help our development chair, Matt, who's been just trying to think outside the box on different ways to partner with organizations and companies that what do they want? What do they want out of a sponsorship? What can IATA do for them? Um, and so yeah, so if people have ideas, we'd love to hear them. We're always looking for ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately, it's, we want, from a sponsorship standpoint, it's a two-way relationship,
Absolutely.
two-way road there. And so obviously we need finances to be able to help, or certain things that can help advance the profession, like you were saying. But then obviously they need a return on their investment as well.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing is even when we ask, I don't think a lot of companies know what what we could do for them. Things like posting, jobs and, posting job postings, highlighting their companies and their organizations and what they do for what types of roles and responsibilities they have for athletic trainers in their company. That's one thing that I think, some companies might be looking for. But as the growth and demand for athletic training continues to increase, I really think there's an opportunity there for companies to look at IATA as an opportunity to get in front of membership and talk about why it's great to work for your company. Why should I be an athletic trainer at insert fill in the blank? Demand is there right now. There's a lot more jobs out there for athletic trainers than there were when I was younger and looking for jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. So back kind of circling, we talked about the budget, and obviously there's money coming in, there's money going out,
Mhm.
and so the idea of what's the idea of a budget? Like, why do we have a budget committee? Because when is it just a guess? Are you just guessing numbers, or kind of talk a little bit about that, and maybe some discussions that you have within the budget committee
Yeah.
about,
We're
okay,
not just throwing darts at a dartboard.
uh,
Yeah, no, it's a complex process. I mean, we look at the budget for the last 3, 4 years or so, really more than that. I think we are current this year. When we looked at our budget, we looked all the way back to 2021. So we look back maybe 4 or 5 years, and we look at the income, that came in based on specifically. We've talked about membership dues and sponsorships are the two biggest things, and um, and then we look at the trends every year of what was requested by committees and then what we actually spent. And we're pretty good about projecting based on looking at the past. We've been pretty good the last couple of years about projecting, and my time experiencing being treasurer, of projecting what we think we're going to spend. And so that part has been nice because obviously you use data to inform you to help you make those decisions. But then it's like, okay, if you're trying to find $3,000 to support a student symposium that you're trying to make better, since we've re-envisioned it, I think, as its own student symposium, kind of standalone from when it used to be with the summer symposium with professionals, and just trying to, okay, where could we carve out a little bit here, a little bit there, and it's about having open conversations. And I might throw an idea out there and then somebody else says, well, that's a good idea, but we got to think about this. And so it's important to have multiple people in the room having those conversations because I may think of something and not realize how that impacts something else. And so it's important that we're communicating together as a group to make sure that we've got multiple brains thinking about something that somebody else may be missing. And so, there's hard conversations sometimes. We might have to deny a request. Like right now, that with membership numbers being due or membership dues being down and sponsorship numbers being down, we've had to turn down some requests on what we spend our money on. And we don't spend a lot of money. It's really just about supporting our membership through advocacy and continuing to make the profession better every year and supporting the membership that way. And so it's not like we're spending a lot of money. Um, we have to be very careful about the money that we do get requests for and what gets approved. So, and then, if we're reviewing something like we did last year for our social media, we added in Hootsuite. And that's a little bit of a fee, but the amount of work that helps with the social media, organizing all of those different social media posts, and then they can show data, right? On how many people have looked at certain things and trends and all this stuff. So being able to back up the cost of something with looking at, okay, how are we able to use this in the past year? Let's talk about that. And so that can be an easy decision when you can see how effective that's been for a committee that's, they can spend so much time on doing something, or they can have a software that can help them and really reduce the amount of time they're spending on it as a volunteer, right? We got to find that happy medium of, we're all volunteers. You can't expect somebody to spend 10 hours a day on social media trying to organize all these different posts. But we need to get our membership involved and seeing our things and hearing about the great things that we do and stuff like that. So that's just a small example of a conversation that we've vetted and ultimately decided to support, because we were hoping that it's really providing more information and reach to membership.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think return on investment and what that looks like and how that not only
Those are hard
benefits, yeah,
conversations. It's so much harder than you ever realize.
yeah, and that's why I wanted to talk to you today about this and just letting people know about that, money isn't just, out there and IET is just randomly spending it, that there's a lot of thought and a lot of conversation that
Mm-hmm.
gets put into this and obviously understanding that there is a budget committee and specifically, looking at that. So, maybe talk us through the process, like once these conversations have happened with the budget committee, and how does the budget get approved, and how does this all move forward, and what does it look like after something's been approved?
Yeah, great question. So we do come together a couple times as a committee, and depends on how easy the conversation is or how difficult the conversation is. We come together a couple times and we talk about what those requests are, and what the projections look like for the next year, and then once we feel like we're in a good spot, our budget committee, we propose that really as a discussion item at one of our IATA business meetings, and we just propose, here's what the budget projections, and open it up for discussion. And that's kind of, we want our membership, with the board and those that are joining on our call, we want them to understand the process and that we've discussed this. We've had hard conversations about it, trying to balance that budget, and that's very hard and that's very difficult. And trying to hear from anybody else that maybe we haven't, of ideas or just thoughts and conversations that maybe we haven't thought of. And then if there aren't any discussion points, the next meeting we move it to vote on the budget. And so all the board and the executive council gets to vote on that process. Um, and so it could be rejected. And then we have to go back to the drawing board and figure out, what are we going to do here? And so it's truly, members are voting on that. And it's not just a one person role where I just make up the budget and I vote to approve it, right? It's vetted within the committee, and then it's put out at the business meeting so that other voting members can vote on it, and other people that aren't voting members can at least hear about it and talk about their points or raise their concerns, and then it ultimately gets voted on.
Yeah. And then once it's been approved, obviously that process happens at the end of a calendar year for the
Yeah,
next, following, because IAT operates on a January to December fiscal year.
correct. Yep.
Ooh, me using big words. Look at that. Uh,
I don't
so,
use big words after 5 p.m.
oh man.
I'm just kidding.
And so, January, December, the end of that year, and then it circles back around. So once January hits, the idea is that make sure that there's a budget in place,
Mhm.
so that there's something to operate off of. And so, kind of
Right. We're
talk a
not just
little,
going rogue,
yeah, talk about
just
that
spending money.
process. Yeah, talk about
No.
that process. Start in
Yeah.
January, and how do you utilize that budget throughout the year, that
Yeah.
fiscal year, to kind of determine how things should be spent, or did
Yeah.
we over project, under project, things like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because in my mind, I was literally just thinking that, one of the checks and balances that we do is every month when we meet, we have our budget sheets and looking at Oh, the balance sheet and the budget sheet and what's come in and what our income that's come in month to month, and then what we've been spending month to month. And so if I if it looks like it's on par and we're on pace, then that doesn't raise any flags. If we, for some reason, I always get invoices first, and then I approve those for payment. So that comes to me. So I approve any invoice that then gets paid. But I also check the budget sheet and the balance sheet every month that comes to me from the coordinating group, our association manager. And I look at that and, I just double check. A lot of times I'm like, okay, what were the invoices I approved? And I just make sure that, those invoices have hit the budget and making sure that it was in the right line item, just kind of making sure, holding ourselves accountable for making sure that what we said we're going to spend is what we are projecting ourselves to continue to spend. And then there are times when, for example, um, we, we didn't award a research. Is that what it was? The research scholarship in a couple of years. And so, one of the things that we've had as a discussion is why are we not awarding that? And so, the committee chair for the research and scholarship committee and we've kind of had some of those conversations about, do we need to restructure this? Why are people not applying to this? And I brought up the idea, well, graduate programs have changed, and the request for those types of projects may be different. And so maybe we need to rethink what that criteria is. But it can also be for professionals that request the scholarship money as well. So that's just something, those are the types of things, like if like a scholarship doesn't get used, asking why, are there barriers that we need to rethink in the last few years and stuff like that, just to make sure that we're continuing to do the membership. It's serving our members correct well, to make sure they can access that research money for whatever reason, but or for their needs. But I think it's just important to make sure you're aligning with what's out there right now. And so for a lot of the research and master's programs, with the 2-year degree now in master's programs, a lot of people aren't doing the full longer size research projects. So that might change those types of requests that get requested for that research scholarship. So the criteria may not fit, for some of the things that once used to be good criteria. But we did award it this year, so that was good. Someone applied, and it's just important, to make sure you're looking at things like that and that you're not overspending monthly budgets and balance sheets and stuff like that. And then keeping an eye on the investment accounts. That's something that we've really kept a close eye on these last couple of years, is keeping an eye on those investment accounts and trying to come up with ways that the IATA can be creative with thinking about how the money that we have, how can we be smart with our money to serve our members? Those are hard conversations,
Yeah.
especially when you do this as a volunteer and you don't fully feel confident in some of those things. You got to rely on one another. Hey, what do you know about this? What do you know about this? And what can we do with this? And are we making the right decision? And, those types of things. Those are hard conversations, because it's not like you're just dealing with your own money and your own pocketbook, right? This isn't a, this is your state association.
Yeah, really important to make sure. Again, I think back to the point of utilizing membership dollars and dollars that are brought in from an income standpoint and using them wisely to benefit most or be most beneficial, I should say, to our membership and to athletic training in Indiana, and trying to do the right things. And like you said, it's not just like, hey, I'm gonna go spend it and buy whatever. It's you're doing that, and then obviously the IATA has a healthy from investments and savings, and making sure that we're not dipping into that unless we have to. But again, those are things are kind of rainy day funds.
Mm-hmm.
If things hit the wall or something went bad, COVID is an example of some organizations, not just nonprofits, but even for profits. They had to kind of look at their savings when COVID hit because it affected them a lot. And I think the IATA came out on a good note and came out balanced on that
Yeah,
end with
absolutely.
COVID.
And
So
that's the thing is, IATA does have, thankful to previous serving board members of the IATA, very strong past with our presidents and our board members of creating such a good, strong budget and a process. And so really those rainy day funds, we really haven't had to dip much into that. And right now it's just a matter of trying to balance membership and sponsorship with what we do use on an annual basis, um, so that we can continue to have that rainy day fund for a day we really need it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I know as I guess one of the other questions I was thinking about is like kind of at the end of the fiscal year, right? And so you're kind of getting down to the nitty gritty, and so um, maybe talk a little bit about of um, typically the idea is to kind of break even on your
Mhm.
budget, but there's going to be some years where you're going to have more money, and there's going to be some years you're not going to have, enough money quote from the budget. So kind of talk a little bit about that process and what that changes, and obviously that probably comes up in the budget committee's discussion. But talk a little bit about maybe what happens with if we have additional money at the end of the year, what kind of happens to that money and those types of things.
Okay. So I would say so one thing that we can project based on past years data would be GLATA, Great Lakes Athletic Trainer Association, and their revenue shares. That's something that we can't predict when we might get a revenue share from GLATA. And so it's like every so many years, three-ish, we project that, but it's never guaranteed, right? And so GLATA deals with a budget and trying to balance their budget, just like IATA does, and their income is affected by membership dollars, just like ours are, and all the things, and so that GLATA revenue share is a healthy added bonus, if you will, on those years you don't project for it. And so, for example, last year we had not projected for that, and that was something that we were actually we actually got and didn't expect that. So it wasn't in the budget as income, and we knew we were really tight on the budget, and so getting that actually helped put us in the positive. In a year that we knew we were going to be really tight and really close on some things. And so that was obviously something that we hadn't projected for that can happen from time to time. And we try to, I would say, under project to be on the safe side for those types of things. So sometimes it happens and we weren't expecting it. That's great. But what we don't want to do is anticipate it and it doesn't happen. So we try to be very um, careful with looking at the past years and the years that comes. And then I say we have a special projects fund. And so if there is a certain amount of money that we have that's in the budget after the fiscal year, we can roll money into our special projects fund. And that special projects fund could be things that we use on something that wasn't, it's a special project. So something that wasn't budgeted for and approved in a budget. So, for example, our 40th anniversary. We actually did prepare for that and had prepared for using money from special projects for that to have a celebration. It's a big thing. 40th anniversary, that's a big thing. So celebrating our Hall of Famers, and we ordered lapel pins. So that was something that wasn't in the budget, and people love those lapel pins. Certain generations may not really even know what a lapel pin is or appreciate that, but you go to NATA, right, and you see some of these amazing people have done so much for the profession, and they have their lapel pins, right? So those lapel pins can mean a lot to some people, but it's just doing little things like that can support um, annual symposium or reception. I'm sorry, reception. Doing things like that we can't do every year. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to balance the budget for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like just like your home budget, right? You're looking at your own finances and your own thing, and obviously it's always better to you want to have more money at the end of the year than what you spend, and then you have that additional money to use as you wish, and there's a process that the IATA has where if there's a more money in the budget from at the fiscal year, certain money goes into savings, a small portion goes into special projects fund to be able to do that. And there's a process, and it all kind of trickles down or trickles up. I don't know how you say that, but it
Mhm.
trickles somewhere, right? But
Right.
there's a process and a policy. That's
Yeah,
the
it's
word
in
I
our,
want
our
to.
policy
Yeah,
or actually it's in our bylaws that
yeah.
discusses that. Yeah.
So that way, I think that's the makes it easy, so that when it's like, great, yep, we've made, this much
Hmm.
more money than what we've, projected for, then there's that policy that's already in place that puts the money where it needs to be. And then we can utilize those funds like in the special projects when something comes up and needs to be utilized, and from that standpoint of things. So I think just like a is your those wondering, about the budget, it's just like your home budget, but I think there's an extra level to it when we're talking about using membership dollars, people that are putting their hard-earned money into the IATA. But then also it's a big decision because we're trying to affect and make the biggest change we can for our profession in the state and things like the Practice Act, like you mentioned, Tiffany. It costs money to do those things. It's not just like it happens, and because we need to utilize people, whether it be obviously our lobbyists, but then it just takes more work to make sure bills are drafted and make sure we keep the process moving forward there and using money to advocate for what
Hmm.
we want to do. And so ultimately, I think membership dollars in the budget, it's all about advocacy and trying to improve our profession from that standpoint of things.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just goes back to the larger picture, right? You become, yeah, as treasurer, you're overseeing the budget process, but back to the back to the whole your where your dollar goes, it's really about advocacy, education, and pushing the profession forward. And I think you serve on the board, you have your primary role, but you also have that larger responsibility, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, was there anything else you wanted to add about the budget committee or treasurer or any other money talk that you wanted to mention here?
No, I mean, I think it's a tough time for probably a lot of organizations to be a treasurer because it's hard to balance the budget. And, there might be a year where you has to pass a negative budget. And if your organization's in a spot where you have some rainy day funds, and you can continue to help each other try to think of different ways to, okay, we're going to pass a negative budget this year, but what are we going to do? And what are we thinking about for the next year? How can we be creative in finding ways to bring in that income? Or if it means, hey, I'm raising the flag right now, we're going to be thinking about what we might need to be cutting in the future. And I think, it's not an easy time to be a treasurer. Um, and the other thing is it's like I mentioned before, it's a volunteer position where people may or may not have a lot of experience or knowledge in that um, particular role. And you don't have to have experience or knowledge in that role. I think what you have to have is being willing to learn and communicate and talk with others and find the answers, but with a team of others. So you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be an accountant. There's IATA and other organizations, NATA and GLADA level. We all have volunteer positions open. You don't have to be an expert in that particular role to serve in that role. It's something you can literally be a novice in and learn and grow with it. Um, so I know, with IATA, we have positions that I know that we can fill. And we have um, voting coming up,
Absolutely.
elections.
Elections are the month of December, correct?
That's today, right?
Yeah.
Today is December 1st. Time is flying by. Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's just, it's really been an eye-opening experience. For first of all, I'd say definitely a novice at serving as treasurer. Eye-opening experience, but then really learning about the larger picture that you play as a board member and the importance that you really can make to a nonprofit volunteer organization.
Absolutely. Well, you are the last podcast of the year.
Woo-hoo!
So,
Should have
uh,
had like a cheers toast or something.
oh, Should have got my
Champagne or
champagne out. So,
sparkling grape juice.
and every podcast this year, I've asked everybody at the end of the podcast a fun question. And
Oh,
so
fun.
this is going to be for you. You're the last one of the year. So, last question is if you could be an animal, what animal would you be and why?
Oh, wow. Well, in my younger days, I probably would have picked a panda because I thought pandas were the coolest things ever. But since I've gotten older, I absolutely love sea turtles. I think they're the coolest things ever. They live for what seems like forever, but to be an older, wise turtle, you have to literally go through one of the hardest challenges. I don't know if you know anything about sea turtles and their egg nests and stuff, but they sea turtles lay like hundreds of eggs, and the survival rate of a baby turtle making it to an adulthood is, I don't know, very small percentage. And so there's just so much that I think you can relate sea turtles to like life and your journey. I mean, it's hard to get it's hard to get from your little egg all the way swimming to the water. There's all these obstacles in life, right? All the big sand dunes. If you the kid that built the big hole in the sand the night before didn't fill in his sand, there goes the turtle. Or you can be picked up by a seagull. I mean, you just got to overcome all these barriers to be successful. But you got to keep going. You just got to keep going. And eventually you could be smooth sailing like the old 150-year-old sea turtle. They're just I have like a sense of urgency about me almost all the time, even when I don't need to have one. And turtles are like give this sense of calmness, I feel like, and they're swimming through the ocean. And I don't know, there's just this seems like it'd be really cool to be a sea turtle. An old wise one.
An old wise one.
An old
And
wise one.
and I think with the weather we're having outside, may not be a bad idea to be on the beach right now with
Absolutely.
freezing cold and snow coming down. So,
Yeah.
well,
Yes.
well, Tiffany, I appreciate you coming on to the podcast and appreciate your role and what you've done for the IATA as treasurer, and just appreciate all the volunteers that have and continue and will put in work for the IATA just to make our profession better.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And thanks for all the work you do.
I try my best. I can talk and ask questions to people, so that's always easy. So, alrighty, I appreciate you coming on.
All right. Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you for tuning in to the Indiana Athletic Trainers Association podcast. We appreciate you taking time to listen and look forward to you joining us again on the next episode. To find out more about the IATA or to get in touch with us, you can visit our website or reach out via social media.